Welcome to Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for next generation campuses. I'm JC Bonilla, EdTech executive, data scientist, and educator. Each week, we cut through the noise and decode what's actually mattering to your institution. In other words, AI explained for higher education. This week is January 2026, and predictions are flying. Everyone's got hot takes on what AI will do this year. Very interesting things, but most of them have a consumer or enterprise angle. So today, I'm joined by my friend, an academic and educator, Dr. Paul Russo, and then we'll be pulling out the 6 predictions that we think matter the most and specifically shape your campus. So let's get into it. Dr. Paul Russo is the Vice Provost and Founding Dean at the Katz School of Science and Health at Yeshiva University. As I said before, an academic, an educator, and a friend. Welcome to the show, Paul. How you doing?
Hi, JC. Good to see you.
Paul and I, my friends, have studied together, have been on the academic trenches together. Have we taught together, by the way? We've drank, we've done academics, we've done papers, we've done everything. Have we taught together? I can't remember.
You know, I'm not sure if you co-taught. I probably dragged you in to give a guest lecture.
That's right. Paul, a little bit of your day-to-day and at Yeshiva University, and again, congratulations on an incredible academic deployment. It was, I think, about 10 years ago that you started working in an academic startup, and today you deployed quite a successful academic enterprise. So just a bit of color of what your day-to-day looks like, what's happening at Katz School of Science and Health, and all things Yeshiva.
So I'm going to add to that my prior work in academia.
Sure.
And I think it's important because when we start to talk about things where the rubber hits the road, I may have different opinions depending on where, the institution that we're talking about. So I was with the City University of New York for 15 years, working for the same provost that I work for here now. But it's a very different structure. It's the 3rd largest university system in the nation, highly centralized, very different from here at Yeshiva. So I'm the founding dean of the Katz School of Science and Health. That is where our focus is what you think it is, STEM and health sciences, clinical programs, master's and doctoral programs only. And I guess in the last 10 years, we went from an idea, 2 people sitting around a table, to we are now 1/5 of the university's enrollments. We're the largest graduate school at Yeshiva. And our kids are knocking it out of the park, and all the things one should measure themselves by. Students getting high growth, high wage jobs, meaningful, impactful careers. We're there. Our employment rates on the STEM and science and tech side are in the 93% range. Salaries, well, they're really good. Clinical side, they're amazing.
You wouldn't be here if you had the same opinions that I have. And more importantly, it is this wealth of experience, everybody. Although he's been working for like 50 years, Dr. Paul Russo, it's only 21. The face tells it, right? And also the haircut, because we do have the same haircut. That's not part of the podcast. Anyway, it's a really important conversation because what we're going to be trying to do today is, again, decouple some predictions that may impact higher education at different rates. And I think one of the fun things that we're going to be doing with Paul today is the range of not only how it impacts STEM, graduate education, but your wealth of experience from online education, multi-campus systems, the works. Before we go into the predictions, I want to do a quick recap of 30 days. What does that mean? In the past 30 days, Paul, we have seen probably 3 incredible drops in AI that shape the conversation and also start revealing how these predictions are going our way or not. The first one coming from OpenAI, and no, I'm not talking about ChatGPT health. I'm talking about Project Gumdrop, where OpenAI and Johnny Ives, for those of you who followed the story last year, it was last year in 24. I think it's 24, 2 years ago, where OpenAI acquired Johnny Ives' firm for $6 billion, Forms, to introduce the first AI devices, this idea of physical AI, and we hear the first deployment of what this could look like. Paul, it doesn't look like screens, it doesn't look like glasses, Ray-Bans, Meta glasses, anything like that. It looks like a pen. And this idea of a multimodal sensor function, this idea that audio, video, motion, it's all omnipresent and being captured, sent to the cloud, and LLMs will be analyzing that. Just think about the student portal, Paul. No longer we need a student portal to log in, but these wearables, AI, the student can come and wear that, right, with you. And the signals that it does to institutions like you and programs that you manage, like why do we need a laptop? Why do we need the phone, right, to do student support? These potentially is creeping up in front of us today. So that's drop number one. The drop number two, and I'm going to let you comment on how these feel or what you kind of following or not. You and I come from the semiconductors industry, right? So we're both electrical engineers and we practiced that many, many years ago. The Rubin era begins, and it was just basically 2 weeks ago where NVIDIA dropped the Rubin chip, right, which is a platform that brings the cost of inference for AI 10x. So inference in context memory, it's really, really important. What does that mean? You know, if every time you come into AI, in a way, it's kind of like your best friend, but you need to reintroduce yourself because he forgets who you are, he forgets certain parts, but all that wealth of information, it's gone. For a student, for you, Paul, administrators and deans and leaders, that means that a counselor can remember a 4-year journey across every interaction for a tenth of the cost. That's literally what it got dropped at the Consumer Electronics Show. Paul, by the way, that was, I mean, if you remember Moore's theory, you're supposed to double the number of transistors. That just basically, for every drop, this just basically dropped all those things. Last two things I want to mention. Google, I predicted this in my prior podcast with artists where I believe that Google will be the dominant technology when it comes to all AI. Google just dropped, I think it was last week, the Universal Commerce Protocol, which in other words, using Gemini, they have taught their agents how to shop, product discovery, how to do cart behavior, cart abandonment, transactions. An incredible defeat on their bottom line in how to approach it with AI, which is basically commercial search and transactions that generate dollars and cents. Last one, of course, I cannot keep on going if I don't mention Claude, right? And the drop of Claude Cowork, which the incredible things that Claude has done for coding now makes it very accessible to non-software engineers or non-developers with a system that is desktop-based and allows you to access local files. Between Claude and Google, we're starting to see the action of AI, the thinking in the brains of AI, and the sensing of AI moving to the next level. So, Paul, are you following any of these? How are these things landing in the Dr. Russo camp?
So I think where I'm at now is to think about how these things will be deployed, right? How is it going to impact people's jobs every single day? And, you know, I don't have a ton of answers. I have more questions than I have answers. But if you look at each one of these technologies, or let's just take the last case, you talked about, you know, Cowork and Google and Copilot. There is a lot of interaction that is still not clear. There's not sense of there's still at least a lot of trust of where your data is hanging out these days. Who will get access to it? How we'll use these things. Even in enterprise versions, I still think there's a lot of uncertainty. Then the next part is, for you and I, these tools are a joy. They're fun. They are a way to play around even and explore. But there is a whole workforce out there who may not feel the same way you and I do, right? So I'm asking, what are the baseline skills that everybody in the enterprise needs to have, regardless of the next 4 or 5 tools you tell me, but what are those baseline set of skills someone will need to be able to keep up with the tools that are coming out? Because I'll tell you, we can train for a certain amount, but I don't think at this point we'll be able to train everybody. So what does your staffing look like? And then the third part, which I think is really big on my mind, is the differences of institutions. You're right. If you sit here, and I sit on a number of committees. I'm co-chairing the University Strategic Planning Committee, which, you know, the provost thinks it's all about academics, which programs and what research are you going to do.
Part of it is.
You know, yeah. Well, then there's student advisement. Then there's out seeking students, you know, in the recruitment and admissions portal. And then there's how the university operates from student finance to budget to procurement to facilities and security. And all of those things fit together. And if you sit back and talk to higher education leaders, and I mean that in the broadest of sense, you've got people at large scale institutions who are waiting for people to hand them a technology and they'll figure out what to do with it. And everybody's got a few opinions, but where things are structured, you're waiting to find out what will your work environment look like. And then you have smaller institutions. It's not even clear who should lead this kind of issue, right? And everything in between. So I'm thinking about, given this rate of change, what are the university structures that I would tell friends about that they need to think about how to get their arms around it? There are so many little bits and pieces and nibble happening in universities. In academic affairs, we ask the question, what should we tolerate in terms of students using them and cheating? We just got past, should students learn? Should students be obliged to use these things? From don't use it to write code to if you can't write code with it, you're not going to get a job. But then that's in academic affairs. What are faculty doing in their classrooms? But that's a curiosity. It's not driving the decision making. Then we're asking other questions. How can we make the university operate better and give the student experience and the faculty experience better? These are real questions. And I'm thinking about what do the structures look like in universities, from big ones to small to everything in the middle. Otherwise, because if you don't know how you're going to approach this wave, you're going to have a bunch of people in silos looking at nibbles and bits.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm hearing three things from you, right? The aspect of through the lens of the data, right? Is the data right? Should we be using the data or not? So those important questions remained, and whether we're going to go into predictions, they're unanswered questions.
Also, who's seeing my data?
Yeah, they're unanswered questions in terms of policy, in terms of privacy, in terms of trust that remain. By the way, everybody in your PhD, you've done a lot of work on benevolence and technology and trust and whatnot. So it'll be very interesting to pick on that side of you. The second thing I'm hearing from you is this idea of enablement training capabilities. So like the labor aspect and the skill, where he's at, who has it, who doesn't have it. So it'd be interesting to see it. I think at the outset, I would tell you that this matches your number three, which is...
Well, it's one more thing in that labor. It's even who do you hire? Because there's a certain amount of the level of this disruption that you're not going to be able to train for it. Training's on a tool, right? If you think about us in the tech world, we always say what we want to look for are people who know how to understand the next level of technology. Now I'll say even on the administrative end, you need to find people who are tech forward, tech curious.
It's or there's going to be a balance, and we'll cover that on our predictions when we start unpacking this idea of the human in the loop, human on the loop, but also the manager of agents. But you're absolutely on the money. But your third point was very interesting, right? That not all universities are created equal. Size, shape, profile, teaching, research focused, tenure granting, non-tenure granting, all those things are also at play. So as we speak about these predictions, I guess I leave it with the following. Your point is well taken, that it's not a one size rules them all. There's a lot of nuance, but the spirit of the prediction, hopefully, and this is where I come as an optimist, I really hope that what we're going to say becomes, because the realities of our institutions, our academic teams, partners, and the students, they're in need for this change because it remains hard and it's just becoming harder. Let's switch to the predictions, Paul. So there's a pattern, right? The pattern that we just kind of cover on these last 30 days is that if OpenAI is building kind of wearables, that sensors layer, right? NVIDIA is kind of building that brain through Rubin, and we start seeing Google or Ontology building the hands, the action. All these pieces coming together to campus, and specifically campus strategy, through the lens of data governance, training capabilities, and of course that not all campuses are being created equal. I like your framework. So what I love for you to do in the next half hour or so is that we're going to take basically 5 to 10 minutes per prediction. I'll try to give just a big summary of what analysts are talking about, so you and I can come and translate on what does it mean for campus strategy, what is the real that we see, and where do we depart from optimism to reality, because yes, the realities are true. So let's start with the year of agents. In 2025, we saw agentic AI unpacking, right? And it's a whole new different type of AI where technology and LM models discover how to do reasoning. But these breakthrough autonomous agents, right? They're not chatbots anymore. These are multi-step tasks that require minimum or none human intervention, human oversight. I know this is very scary, and it brings a lot of uncomfort for people who are not there, right? These platforms kind of roll out multiple agents behind the systems, in front of the systems, and allow basically a scalability that is unprecedented, right? What we've seen is that customer service operations, interactions that require knowledge work can be end-to-end. Paul, let me give you a statistic. Today, in Element, 73 to 80%, in other words, at our worst, 73%, at our best, 80% of the conversations of customers, our clients, our awesome partners saying, I need help, they're answered by AI. They're not interacting with humans. The satisfaction of AI and humans, it's almost at par. People do prefer humans. There's something very human in talking to a human, obviously. But there's something really clear that AI can do these jobs, right? Why does this matter for higher education? And then this is the part that is fascinating. Yeah, admission counselors, financial aid, student success coaches. There's a lot of high-touch interventions here, but that are super important for our students. As you know, a student comes in with a tough issue, and that humanity is what unlocks the power of higher education. But at the same time, there's a ton of repetitive tasks. So I'll toss it back to you that the promise here is that we have a potential to unlock that repetitive tasks, 80% are done by AI, and hopefully the high-touch interventions, 20%, I don't know, are done by us humans. How's this landing at work? Kind of where do you see agentic AI unpacking in your school or the schools that you basically, or in the sector that you understand?
That's a really profound question. Let me start with something. Let me start with something that I think a lot of people will say yay about, which is different from Element. How many people would be very happy if for all of your procurement issues, for filling out a purchase rec, processing a purchase rec, processing a PO, getting it done, checking whether vendors have received their money, following up with a vendor to say, I need a receipt. How many people out there would be thrilled if they didn't have to do it or to have someone in their shop follow up, right? Well, I think nobody would argue about that. Not even the procurement people.
In the context of higher education or all contexts?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
When I comment today, it'll mostly be about higher education.
So you're starting to make me think, hey, JC, awesome, but there's places in the institution that this is more ready than others. Is that where you're going? Are you leading the witness this way, my friend?
From a comfort level, people would be very happy with some of those repetitive operational tasks that really weigh down a university's resources and create often a suboptimal experience, right? Chasing behind a purchase rec or checking whether a vendor got paid or not, right? That takes resources. It winds up often taking senior leaders when you've got to follow up and something didn't happen. But agents can do that in that thinking process faster than we can and with more accuracy. And an agent can call you up and say, hey, we've got one thing that needs your help. Just like when my deputy calls me and said, I need you to make a phone call. We got one thing that's stuck in the queue, right? So I started with that because it's safe. Now I'll move to where people get a little more uncomfortable and even a little more uncomfortable. When we start talking about using AI or agents in a call center or in the admissions group, what a blessing it is if you can answer the call within 3 seconds. And I'm going to use the word call, but what we mean is multi-channel input like chats or WhatsApp or mining your social, waiting for someone to post so you can find out what they need, or even an applicant comes in. An agent can give response times that we just will never have enough staff to do, nor will it work for us, unless you're a very large university with a call center somewhere else so that you're on a 24-hour timeline. but people will start getting answers very quickly. And what we have seen in a lot of cases is the responses that people get from agentic AI are consistently better. Now, there are exceptions where you do need a human in the loop, and that's what you were just talking about, but faster and more consistent answers. Then and I don't think most people would have problems saying, here's what our program is about. Here's what we cover in these courses. Here's what you'll learn. Here's the jobs our students have gotten. Let me talk to you about a couple of our alumni and where they are these days. That can be done in a very humanistic or anthropomorphic agent, right? Better and more consistently than anyone. FAQs come to life in new ways, like thinking about a field like nursing. What are your NCLEX pass rates? How do you help a student prepare? Those are mechanical questions that people can get very quickly and in a very warm and personable way. Then I'm going to move to something a little more uncomfortable. What potential students would love to know. Here's my transcript. Do I qualify? So that you have to find out where you are as a human being. I would argue that an agentic AI can scan once you build up a sufficient LLM or SLM, a customized, targeted small language model, you can evaluate pretty quickly a transcript just to get a good sense of if does somebody have the background.
You should check out how we're doing an Element, by the way. Keep on going.
Okay.
Problem solved. Anyway.
Well, no, this is true because look, we all know we for those of us who deal with international students, we have lookups where we can rate the school, find out
the
level
and things like that. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll tell you, agentic AI can do that more consistently, faster, and cheaper than an agent in your call center, even if you outsource it.
Also with the international twist, that's a spicy
comfortable
comment, Dr. Russo.
I am comfortable with that.
All right.
Right?
So
let me just get you to the most uncomfortable. Let me just get you to the most uncomfortable.
All right, go ahead. Land the plane.
Out of thinking about people from higher ed who are listening. And then it gets trickier. What does it mean to give academic advising? What does it mean to use this in class? What is it going to do to the future of learners? How do you teach? But then what's it going to do to the future of learners, of students who are coming in to university? Friends, I don't have that answer either. I welcome all of you to reach out and let's talk about it.
So what you're saying is that through the lens of agentic, which has the ability to introduce goals, uses memory. So let me do the decoupling of what agentic is, right? It has goals, so it's not only responses, right? So it has memory, so it can remember certain contexts. It uses tools. You can send email into your example of the uncomfortable ones, right? It can go into a database and look at grades of a student to give advice, right? And it can schedule interventions for academic affairs or student life. And of course, it plans. It figures out how to do it and whatnot. So within these four components, agents could have places where they start working and it feels more comfortable, in places in higher education where we still do not feel uncomfortable. But here you're very interesting. Obviously, as a techno AI optimist, I hope this was done 10 years ago. So the part that I want to not only challenge you, but say, Paul, how do you see this? This is the worst that technology is. Not in safety, in terms of capabilities. Sometimes the audio sounds clunky. Sometimes the email has the N dashes and whatnot. All this is the worst it will be. It's only getting better. And we have seen that projection, that output in the past, 2 years. Just look at how graphics are experienced today relative to how text or no graphics were experienced just 6 months ago, right? It's only going to get better. But to your point about the difficult ones, I always found really interesting how we were very comfortable with a counselor reading an app and not being consistent. Because we're humans. And what I know is that when I read 60 apps, my 61st, it's crap. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, so I don't have consistency. And the biases that I bring in the human when I read an Indian application and I switch to Chinese and maybe I still have my Indian in me or whatnot, or just basically international applications, that was real. The last point that I see that it really excites me is the aspect of pattern recognition. And I think your point is well taken, but the things that I find mind blowing for me, and this is where I'm excited about agents landing on campus, I need to wait for that student to take the midterm and flunk it to know that an intervention is needed. That's, I don't know, 7 weeks into the course. But pattern recognition through looking at maybe an LMS and connecting the LMS with behavioral data from a CRM, now I know that you have not attended classes in 10 days and your emails are more negative. What does that mean? It's just a flag that allows me to do my work more effectively. And that for me is what we are not able to do today. And just love for you to react to it. The technology, I'm not talking about use cases that are up in the air. This is like stuff that is being worked on months ago and is actually being deployed in different campuses. What do you say on that?
I think that is a perfect example of a place where agentic AI will do better than we can and will give us more time to do what we do better, right? If you think about it, if you've got a faculty teaching, with respect to community colleges on a 3-3 load, although they wish they had 3-3 loads, and responsible for some kind of research, that's a heavy task.
It's a
right?
heavy lift, of course.
So when is a faculty member going to be able to genuinely and consistently keep up with not just they have to keep up with the grading of assignments, and we want frequent assignments and early on to get those cues that you just mentioned. We don't wait till midterm. Pedagogically, we have lots of assignments throughout. But grading those, unless it's just sort of self-graded or sort of pre-programmed quizzes, which is not, human being can't catch all of that. Catching tone in email, you get some, you won't get others.
It's the pattern recognition, right? The computer is much better.
I think what you're talking about and flagging issues, I think it's good now and will only get better. So I am on the same page with you, and that will give our faculty more and more capacity to do what they are good at, is to look at very complex issues and, if you will, debug your algorithm, look at your project and give you very specific targeted feedback that at this point, the agent who doesn't know you, who hasn't had that conversation with you at the cafeteria in line, that we can do that as a faculty member. And I just put one other thing out to you that I hope some of my colleagues will think about. Adjunct faculty are magic. Truly, in our programs, the science and the tech programs, we'd like to have 50% adjuncts because they bring a real world industry experience. They bring connections. They provide internships. They provide jobs. It is magnificent how you can really make graduate programs come to life with adjuncts. However, the best people have jobs other than teaching in my program, right? They don't teach for the money, but they teach out of love, but they're also busy people. And if you can use these tools to help them do their job, to take away some of the catches, when they're swamped with work, not grading papers, that's a different issue for me, not being the source of feedback, but at least right now, helping to catch issues. I think this is just a real win for universities across the board. But I can almost feel the listeners getting excited about this, but I can also see people scratching their heads saying, where do I even begin? How do I do this? Who's responsible to help me?
But I think one of the things that you said here that for our listeners take home is this idea that through the lens of agentic, there is places where it lands better and it's more comfortable to use a different word. And as the use cases expand, there are places where the depth, the richness, the sensitivity, the complexity increases. AI could thrive, but the reality is where the campus are needed. I'm going to move you along, but we could stay on this one. I can already tell, I can stay with this one for another half hour with you. Agents are coming to campus. That's a prediction, and we could probably see the manifestation in different ways, right? But is your institution ready to use them? One of the things I can tell you definitively, right, is as we build AI technology in Element or all the advanced analytics ML tools that I've led or managed, right, is that data is the biggest enabler of quality and execution. So if the data infrastructure in 2026 becomes sexy. I know I just used the word sexy and data. That doesn't happen very often. So a lot of analysts and forecasters are agreeing that the context of data, or aka context engineering, becomes strategically critical. So here's a prediction. Investing in data and context engineering to support agents will become a sexy enterprise. Or will become sexy in enterprise, will become sexy in enterprise. Companies that have not organized their data will find that they can use these AI tools that everyone is talking about. So all these awesome use cases that I just pushed for, the easy ones or the hard ones, they are meaningless unless you have a good layer of data that allows you to do magic. AKA, you bought a beautiful Ferrari and you're fueling it with water. To use the engine of that marvelous car, you need to have the right fuel. Higher education, we know data. It's, you know it, I know it. It's not how we start the day. Specifically, and this is where I'm going to go to you, this is where the student data lives in the SIS. This is where the engagement data lives in the CRM. In your learning data lives in the LMS. And I just basically, to the construct of 3 systems, and we know there's probably 20 others that I'm even mentioning, right? So how does that reality look like in Yeshiva, in what you've done in the past? And if I could send it to another question, real, how's your data?
So I don't have to talk about a specific institution to make this. And before I answer your question, I'm going to come back to something I said a minute ago, because I'm telling you, it is the single most important issue here is within any university, large or medium or small, the question is, who is driving this initiative, right?
You mean have you not met chief data officers on campuses?
No. You're already down into the data as to what makes it successful. Most universities have no agents, or a handful are just buying, and a number are buying enterprise licenses to Copilot or Gemini. But the question is, who in the university is thinking about the university needs to work differently? Is it just the provost? Is it the IT group? Is it HR? We want to do some functions. Is it?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on that. Well, yeah, 100%. 100%.
This is the first step. You can't even begin this conversation if there isn't someone saying the university needs someone with authority and influence to move it along.
Who are the AI champions that basically take on muscle in those
and decision makers? You know that weird question when you go to get it subscribed to a white paper and download, it asks the question, how big is your company? How much is the money? And are you a decision maker?
Who's got the budget?
Yeah. But also who has the authority to make these decisions? So I'm just saying to the audience, if you're going, this is all great. Where do I start? The first is to figure out who owns the change, because these are technologies, but I don't believe these things reside only in the IT groups or because you've got processes, the way you've got workflows. How do you do this in the register? How do you do this in the bursar? How do you do this in procurement? How do you do XYZ in HR? And you can't bring all that together and have a common, clear set of data unless somebody is organizing how it all fits together. Now, to answer the question directly, that is the best setup. Somebody's got to organize the data, right? Because you can't have holistic context if you can't access courses, performance, advisement notes, other kinds of behavior. You can't really give the best advice and flag problems to figure out even who you should talk to on the student end, right? So you can't really do half of the work that we just described unless data fits together, which means workflows need to make some kind of sense. I'll just ask everybody to scratch your head and recall when you moved from a homegrown set of systems for operations and payroll and so on to you move to an ERP, like an Oracle or a PeopleSoft. Do you remember that? Do you remember the pain?
Yeah.
I feel for you. But the truth is the data, the workflows and the data had to be aggregated into some kind of operational piece. Now we're dealing with something different. You're not just, some digital set of structured data, but you're integrating into that all kinds of stuff, structured and unstructured. So coursework, et cetera, to give good advice, to identify and flag people when there are challenges. Then, of course, you'll hit worries, and this is not for today, but you will hit worries of academic freedom, FERPA, which it's not. I'll just tell you now, short answer, it is not, because these are all...
You're saying FERPA is not what?
Is a non-issue here.
Yeah.
Right? The agent is like one of your own employees. It's for the purpose of work, it's for the purpose of schools. But, again, I go back and endorse what JC said a minute ago, that you're going to have to get workflows in order. You're going to have your data aggregated in a certain way, or at least accessible. And right now, a lot of your systems just aren't set up to do that.
Your point is right in the money. Across more than 300 university partners that are in our portfolio, and the dozens that I've worked out or advised, we see that sometimes the change, right, comes from a bottom-up approach, and you'll see the admissions office pushing the AI initiative for the entire institution, because they bought this little vendor or this awesome tool called Element, whatever, and they're pushing up. There's also a tops-down approach where, it's centralized, IT is driving. Either way, you will need, and this is basically where in 2026 we started seeing the emergence of context engineering. Many of us have heard the word prompt engineering, but context engineering becomes fundamentally radical prerequisite for success, or whether it's agentic or good AI. And I'll give you 4 prompts so we can go into the next one, right? The identity of the context is super important. And remember what we discussed at the very top. What does that mean in terms of privacy and whatnot? But for AI to thrive in context engineering, it's the identity of the context, who the student, what their major is, the enrollment, status, because otherwise, how can you personalize? The true value of AI comes from that. The behavioral context, number 2. What have they done recently? Have they opened 75 emails, or they ignore all of them? Have they visited these websites? Have they submitted assignments? And then you start seeing the cross-collaboration between the systems. The historical context. Oh, you've looked at 75 websites and you submitted 2 homeworks late. Is that good or bad? You need to have the historical pattern to understand whether they engage above their normalcy or not. And last but not least, the institutional context. Good data for AI needs to understand who you are as an academic institution, the deadlines, your policies, your resources. This is where all these knowledge databases are super important. But without these 4, these predictions that we're talking about will never land campus. And in a way, Paul is reminding us this is hard, and there may be some delta. But everybody, this is where this industry is going, AI, right? And how it starts verticalizing depending on sector. In a way, it's kind of what we're doing here. We're starting to see and have the conversation about the real on AI. Paul, anything else on data? We're doing fantastic with time, meaning it's about 45 minutes and we only cover 2 predictions. So I got 4 more. Anything else here?
Look, just to say everything you mentioned is nothing you would not want. It's nothing that's not in the head of the staff.
Yeah.
Right? When you go to advise a student, you have to get context. You wish you could get your hands on, are they participating and how are they performing and so on. And are you going to contact every faculty member? You might, but think about the complexity. That is that's when you've got an escalated case. Imagine if you could do this across the board for numbers of students, right? Think about the impact on student success and retention.
Poof.
You'll never do that. You'll never get this close with people.
Paul, let's do 4, which is ambient AI, very, very quick, and then we can jump into 5, because I think it's 4 is probably the more far ahead, and 5 and 6 are more relevant. And I'm very curious to hear your thinking on capabilities and how to retrain people. So number 4 is this idea of, if the nature of work is changing, right, and we start looking at AI differently, there's also this whole new AI that nobody has interacted with. And we're going to see it for the first time here, which is ambient AI, the shift from pull and push. And I'm just going to go really quickly so then I can jump into the 5th one. What we know is that on what is called ambient AI, something that it's always on, wearable. earbuds, environmental sensors, right? It observes your context throughout. What you're doing, what you're saying, what you're seeing. It's proactive as opposed to being reactive, right? And you're receiving help without asking is different. What is the contrast? Think about today, what is called intentional computing. You have a question, I don't know, pull your phone, unlock it, or use your face, I don't know. Open the app, type in, and then you get your answer. That is a dramatical departure, and I think, this is my prediction, Q4 we're going to start seeing how this gets deployed. Can these reach campuses? It could happen, but it probably is one of the more, it will be more in consumer enterprise technology and apps rather than campuses. Anything, 30 seconds on this one for you? Anything you'd like to add?
Sure. I think these are one of those harder issues.
Yeah,
Do people want to be always on, always listen to, always track? I'll just remind folks to think about at home. Alexa is now starting to listen for a certain amount of time afterward.
Gosh. Alexa Plus,
and they give you, and you get a second response from it. Yeah. It's a little odd sometimes.
Yeah.
And, are you prepared to be listened to? That's the question. Are you prepared to be listened?
If you were my wife, I would say yes, please. But we're not talking about that type of listening. We're talking about always on, where we understand some of these, when some of the privacy and some of the regulations are not leading. The technology continues to lead. From my point of view, there's going to be significant work that needs to be done for this to be systematic and systemic and kind of in all these technologies. But I'm starting to see movement there. All right. Ambient AI is coming. And it's going to change how students interact, whether it arrives on campus this year or next year, but it's probably going to be felt, right? Now, here's the prediction that should have everyone in higher education paying attention, right? And I'm really excited to see how we unpack this one. That is, institutions who figure this out this year will pull ahead dramatically. And this is what is called the compounding effect. Many analysts are saying that in 2026, leading organizations, the ones who have been working in 2024 and 2025 preparing, will put ahead even more. And the laggers who have not been doing these conversations, maybe they're staying in these AI committees, right, will remain behind. And this isn't about incremental improvements on how AI strategy or the benefits come in, but through the lens of AI, it should be seen as a compounding effect. In other words, organizations that will operate fundamentally different this year. The AI native institution. What do you think this means for higher education? I think I have so many thoughts on this one, but I'd like to pass it to you and start with what you're thinking and how you hear this aspect of higher education strategic differentiation through the lens of AI, whether it's in operations, in teaching, or in the comfortable or less comfortable use cases. What say you, Paul?
So I think we have seen historically that there's certainly a first mover's advantage, right? The people who get out in front.
What do you mean? Alta Vista, Yahoo, what are those again? Search engine up to...
But, there's certainly a cost of entry, right? And so whoever moves out first will hopefully get benefit in the long run. However, it's going to come at a cost. You're going to be experimenting, go through certain headaches and bumps in the road, and you have to decide where the right element is for you. No pun intended, no endorsement intended, but I'm a big fan of Element.
Thank you.
We used Element for a very long time.
You did. One of our first clients, so thank you again. And
okay.
Come back anytime you want, Paul Russo.
All righty. So there is a first mover's advantage. But I want to say to others who aren't ready to take on the full move to agentic AI or other new technologies, that one, you can figure out where you can win. Identify 2 or 3 major challenges that either performance is down or the cost of operations are a problem, and you can move forward with some of those solutions, be it admissions, be it back office operations, for those of you who are ready, in the classroom. or around student retention. So you can start. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to boil the ocean. Start where you need to start. You may not agree with that. I happen to think, you got to you got to start somewhere. But I will say this. There is space for people to come in the back end, especially if you just can't find the resources to invest in getting that, you'll just be slower, but others will have more of an advantage. But I will say this to every university. Like I say to my students, because we run programs in masters in AI and computer science and analytics and those sorts of things. Either you're going to get on the AI bus or you're going to get run over by it. You have your choice.
Some analysts are using this quote that, this year, and for the record, I don't think this applies to campuses, and we can talk about why. But this year is where the gap becomes visible, right? And it may become permanent. This idea that if you're not getting the boat or the AI bus in 2026, it will be permanent. I think there's a lag effect on campuses, academic institutions, and higher education overall. So whatever we're seeing in 2026, maybe circa 2024, but the vibes are slightly different. Do you feel the same way there, Paul?
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you with that. No argument. But I know it's time for people to dip their toe in the water and start figuring out what it is they know, but and try to identify what it is you don't know or where this can be an advantage. But if you don't, you got to start somewhere. And I think you can delay some of it, but it's an inevitability in our fields.
I would love to shift to our last prediction where I think you, in a way, started with that. Right? And it's very linked to the idea of talent and talent attraction, talent shaping. Who runs our schools, who teaches our students, who is the next dean of a top university in the country, right? Who is Paul Russo in the future, right? Because what analysts and predictions say, right, is that AI becomes a core expectation, not an experiment in the sense. So you expected to see it. So what is the parallel? It's 10 a.m. and a young person has interacted with AI for shopping, for social media, and maybe even to get, her taxi to pick her up from point A to point B, right? It's so omnipresent in a way it's an expectation, which then links to this idea of then AI literacy. It's not a nice to have. It's a mandate. So if I need to be functionally literate, meaning I need to know how to use the tools, but I need to be critical literate. So is this good output or bad output of AI? You can spot a hallucination, right? Can you also spot the biases and verify the accuracy of the output? One of your favorite ones. What about the ethical literacy? Hey, I don't like where you pull the data. Are there data privacy and intellectual properties that are being abused or not through this AI? Last but not least is strategic literacy, right? So how should we identify where AI should be applied or not? How you also started the conversation about easy cases or not. So what do you think this whole thing does to administrators? And let me even take it to the next level, to students. How do you teach them? I mean, that's a whole podcast in itself, but anyway. Go, Paul.
Well, so let's tease out two elements, starting with staff. Mm-hmm. I was saying earlier, you need to, in those transferable skills that you always put, skills and knowledge and skills at the bottom, the ones that have nothing to do with the specific job. Well, these have to do with the specific job. You won't be able to perform a number of tasks across the enterprise without some level of tech savvy, a level of tech curiosity. And I don't mean developing them, but just using them, right?
Beautiful.
Would you hire anybody these days who couldn't use a word processor or email? And I don't mean to give us just a silly example, but it's a basic, right? And as you move up, while people may not have the best design skills, PowerPoint, kind of a standard. These are just basic office tools. And as JC indicated, the experience for people in life and also now at work is just going to be AI-centric. Exactly where it lands up in over what period of time, can't say. But the ability to have a thinking partner, the ability to move very quickly through generating a mock-up, a first model, the ability to have someone just give a quick check to a document to find errors. Those are sort of simple tasks that, if in any employee you will expect it, otherwise they're just not productive, right? It's going to be that laggard. So those are small. Now, how far you go with how much creation you allow, your concerns as it moves into academia about if agents are creating content, we have copyright issues and, agents won't know how to adapt. I hear you. I get it. I have some struggles of my own, but I also find there's certain things that agents can do in academia, like identifying the challenges, like short answer, like being available more on the anytime, anywhere scale for people who are doing their studying off hours and such. So I think there's a lot that can be done. I think this is where we're headed, but you're going to get on the bus or run over by it.
Paul, what an incredible display of conversation and applications. I really want to thank you for your time. If there's one thing I want everybody to remember, and I'm going to ask you the same thing, right? Like, what are the things you want them to remember, right? Is 2026 is the year that AI stops being a technology decision, right? For me, across campuses and everyone that I advise, it becomes an institutional strategic decision. And technology decisions versus strategic decisions, there's a lot of nuance here, right? And I hope that these predictions that we covered today, whether they feel real or not, and I appreciate so much your candor and your insight, this is how it starts basically being felt. And what are the one thing that you like people to remember from this episode?
So I want to say thank you to everyone for listening. And I want to acknowledge that these are exciting and also tough times. People are trying to figure out what is it they have to do at their universities? How will I get it done? And as you say, these are strategic decisions. Who will make the decisions? Who will implement them? How will it get funded, especially if you're in a small or a medium-sized university, making investments in other ways? So I want to acknowledge what you're going through, and I say these are conversations that should continue. And we should all be there to support each other, right? And share best practices and share the things that have worked and the things that haven't. And I just hope this will continue. But I appreciate being here. So thanks so much, JC.
Well, not only this should continue, but our conversations, and I hope everybody enjoyed, Paul, because I hope to have you here. Today we covered from, AI pens to chip compute to predictions that are going to make us more agentic, data privacy and whatnot. So I hope you really appreciate that. What we're trying to do is bring you a true perspective and what is happening in higher education. Again, Paul Russo, thank you very much. Your details, LinkedIn, are on our notes, and I look forward to seeing you again. So I'm JC Bonilla, and this is Higher Intelligence. Stay smart, stay curious, and I will see you in our next deep dive. Thanks for listening to Higher Intelligence. This show is part of the Redefine network, home to the largest collection of podcasts in higher education. Redefine is where higher ed goes to grow. You can find more podcasts, webinars, videos, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe to get new content sent directly to your inbox. Redefine is brought to you by Element 451, the AI agent platform for higher education. Learn more at element451.com.